So all of these mega trends are intact. And if you look at all of them, like it's kind of hard to be bearish. But short term, it's just something like my gut. I don't have a system like you do right now. And my gut has been kind of confirming what you've been saying over the last few weeks, which is short term, we're in for some serious problems in this market.
This episode is brought to you by Kraken Custody. You'll hear more about them later in today's episode. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another live streamed episode of the 1000X podcast. Avi Feldman is out. He's been out for the last couple of weeks with some personal stuff. Wishing him well. He will be back on Monday. In the meantime, very exciting. We've wanted to have Max on the podcast for a very long time. Welcome, Max Bronstein, Giga Chad, turbo crypto trader, extremely successful guy. We get our listeners attack us every time we try to go too much into like biographies and lore. But basically, Max had started his run at writing newsletters for Bitcoin Magazine. Then he was at Coinbase Ventures. Then he crushed it during DeFi summer, and the rest is history. He's currently launching Mainframe Capital to sort of institutionalize his crypto trading mojo. And he's one of the, let's call it top 3 people that I talk to about crypto, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. So it's super exciting to have you on the podcast, and we can just shoot the shit and talk markets today. Appreciate you, Max. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate it, Jonah. It feels like I'm calling into my favorite, radio show. Long-time caller here. Big fan. Big fan of the podcast.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Long-time listener, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time when I was a kid just getting ferried back and forth between home and elementary school. And I would just listen to AM radio all the time, like real dark, wacko AM radio hosts of the early 1990s, people like Tom Likas with just horrendous ideas and disgusting, totally inappropriate content. And now I get to be one of those people with you.
Right.
Welcome to the show, Max. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks, going on. Happy to be on.
Lots to talk about in crypto markets. I don't even know where we should start. Like, what are you thinking? What the hell just happened? And what are you thinking? What are you doing here? Everybody's panicking.
Yeah. I mean, a bit of, I guess, context on how I guess view the market and how I guess we at the firm like make decisions. Obviously, I kind of have my own, I don't know, like fundamental beliefs on like where things are, what like the bigger picture is. But we do things with a bit of like a systematic overlay, more or less, which like you obviously appreciate when you can sort of outsource some conviction, to numbers and an algorithm instead of like your own, discretion or kind of emotion. So I don't know, there is a lot going on. I was kind of buying the dip yesterday purely on the basis of our systems just said, hey, on a fairly high time frame basis, that was an extreme.
High time frame meaning what? Like long term or short term?
Like usually like weeks to a month or so.
Long term.
Yeah, that was like obviously quite a big dislocation, and I mean, you kind of saw it yesterday, like ETH and Solana, just those were big breakdowns. So a part of me is thinking that like some of these higher time frame structures are actually pretty broken, which is cause for concern, because I think the biggest mistake I made last cycle was sort of not respecting, I guess, Bitcoin's downtrend when it started.
A lot of us
obviously
screwed that up.
Yeah, obviously market structure is different this time. Not that humans are kind of the same, but yeah, our systems kind of said to get long essentially last night around, I think, let me see, Bitcoin around like around 101, and then ETH around 3.2. So we picked up majors exposure, and then actually a good bit of plasma yesterday. I was able to get some at 27 cents.
Whoa.
I think that thing is just absolutely hated, and again, it's kind of when the systems say go, it's sort of nice. And one thing I remember I was watching actually about plasma.
Does your system ingest funding rates? Like, are you getting long plasma when basis is negative, or if like does basis feature into your systematic model?
Basis does, but it's actually more for Bitcoin and ETH basis.
Okay.
Plasma, funny enough, trades generally with a positive basis, just because you do have a lot of farmers who are farming the yield and selling it off.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Plasma, though, is if you look on a circulating basis, the OI to market cap is actually quite high. I think it's around like 0.45 to 5. But it's doing a lot of volume, so it's turning a lot over. Usually the coins where you see high market caps or OI to market cap, like there's super low volume coins where nothing really happens. But on this one, like there is a lot of open interest here, and this thing is doing like a lot of volume. So, my kind of guess is there's definitely a lot of offsides positioning, and you can even see it qualitative. Like you hop on Twitter or X, sorry, and every day it's just, I hate Plasma, I'm losing money on Plasma. So it's kind of fitting when we do get, I think, these essentially like trend reversals, and that's really what our systems look for. The things that are kind of the most hated, they can
But
they
when
can put
you
up
when you
strength.
scooped up Plasma, and when your system said to buy, I guess we could. I don't want you don't want to divulge your secret sauce, but I love
Yeah.
systematic trading. I haven't been deploying it recently, but it was sort of how I made most of my career, was as a systematic trader, because I lack conviction as a short term trader. But what you were saying is your system kind of tracks breakouts or trend channel breaks, whatever. 27 cents on Plasma, if that's the first time your signal fired, like that 27 cents was still in the midst of kind of a violent downward trend channel. You bottom ticked it there almost. I guess it did trade down to 24, 23 or whatever, but like that's not a
Yeah.
trend break. That's just amazing timing.
So it gave it flashed kind of actually on the out. So after it had after it had already bottomed.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, and then you can, we do things like we look at like relative. We can use the signals on kind of on a relative basis. So let's say like Plasma over ETH or whatever, majors and similar signals, right? So we're able to kind of find, or at least make picks on what we think will be the best performers. But obviously there's discretion, like in all these, right? You have to kind of be
Yeah.
tapped in. You have to know how hated it is, right? You have to
It's
go look at
semi-systematic. Yeah.
exactly. It's quantum mental,
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into that in a second. I guess, okay, so I'm just looking at charts here. That's why I'm not staring at the camera. I guess looking at the market, just talking to you talking to you over lunch or talking to you just as we do on Telegram or over the phone, like you've been kind of bearish for a few like weeks at least. But my approach to the market has just been, I am not going to trade this thing short term. I do not know what's going on right now. Every single medium and long term feature of this market flashes bullish for me. Let's start with rates, right? Like, okay, fine, the interest rate geeks are saying that Powell is doing something that's less dovish or more hawkish than they expected. So they're all running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off. I don't know whether the hell that's real or not, but just generally like like zoom way out, the direction of travel is from higher rates to lower rates, not the opposite. So I'm comfortable there over the medium to long run. I don't care. We're not going back into a hike cycle. Geopolitically, we're probably closer to the eighth inning rather than the second inning of Ukraine Russia. When that ends, lots of deflation, asset prices rip. AI, I think we're probably closer to the second inning than the eighth inning of this insane bubble. And so that's both bullish asset prices, bullish crypto, and also deflationary because Fortune 500 companies can eke out more return on equity with fewer employees by just having ChatGPT answer basic questions instead of an army of like super expensive middle managers. And maybe even bitch work at the lower levels too. We'll see. What else? Like or crypto is legal now. How about that? It's been legal for not that long, and as we know, just with precedents maybe you could talk more about this because I know this is a core part of your thesis. But like, if you look at laterals in the airline industry, the oil and gas industry, like other industries that have been blessed with deregulation, it's not like it just sends 700% overnight after laws get passed. It takes like, a couple of years for the money to filter into the ecosystem. And so, aside from the crypto as Bitcoin as an alternative reserve asset mega trend, you also have blockchain disrupting financial plumbing mega trend that just kicked off. So all of these mega trends are intact. And if you look at all of them, like it's kind of hard to be bearish, but Short term, it's just something like my gut. I don't have a system like you do right now. And my gut has been kind of confirming what you've been saying over the last few weeks, which is short term, it like we're in for some serious problems in this market. I don't know why. You seem to know why. The only thing that I did was clean up my book, which is what I do when I start to get uncertain over the short term. You know, I sold my CryptoPunk. I cleaned up a bunch of line items and rolled them into BTC. So I sold some shit coins and put them into cash. And pretty much the only positions I have now are in crypto. I have lots of positions outside of crypto, but in crypto, I have Bitcoin, Aerodrome, Hyperliquid, and you and I both have a bunch of locked XPL we can't sell. But you seem to be trading it actively, and I'm not. So what like? Okay, so that's the end of my rant. Question, to put it back in your court. What, like, whatever my gut was telling me, your mind was telling you too, and you clearly are able to articulate it. Like, what made you bearish? What made you freak out? And what can our listeners take away to, like, and are you bullish now, short term?
Yeah. So bullish short term. But again, that's more like based on the system. If that were to tell me otherwise, then I would, I guess, kind of flip to more neutral. So in terms of, I guess, what got me worried was, again, one, the system actually flashed like some pretty big warning signs at when we went back up to like 125. And the backdrop is just kind of interesting because, and I agree with you actually on, the setup is there in terms of like, we have these institutional rails. I agree. I think money's going to get easier. I kind of don't really agree with like the debasement narrative, because I think debasement is like it's a slow process, and I think people obviously like get ahead of their skis. But yeah, look with Bitcoin, like there's just not really that many floating around. So, supply is tight, and there's so many ways now for people, big money to buy it. But again, yeah, like the 125 area, to me above 120K, the thesis I had was like it was going to be short-term distribution. And I agree with you on the long-term prospects, but again, I think for probably a lot of your listeners and, anyone managing, like, let's say, a fund in the space, you're more allocated to crypto as a part of your net worth. So taking on that volatility is a lot harder. If you're obviously diversified and a normal adult, like you are, I actually think, you don't even really need to you don't need to worry too much. If anything, it goes lower, it's like, it's great. You get to kind of boost your stack. But I guess the few things that have been worrying is, just from like a chart perspective, you had kind of clear distribution above 120K.
Distribution just means selling.
Just selling and no follow through from buyers. Like sellers are clearly overpowering buyers in those areas. And, these OG whales have been like quite transparent in their sells. It's been in your face. They haven't been hiding it. You have the Galaxy.
Yeah, they're tweeting about it.
Yeah, 80,000 Bitcoin. You have this guy Garrett Bullish or whatever. That offloaded, I don't know, a few billion, and you see all these like kind of on-chain trackers. So to me, there's just this clear, like, if you've been holding from 2013 or 2011 onwards, you got to 100, 120, you have all these institutional on-ramps, you have the president of the United States having his entire net worth in crypto and kind of, grifting around it. Like, it's not the worst time to take some chips off the table. It's a supernatural spot. And, I saw this article, which a lot of people saw on like Bitcoin's silent IPO, which I agree that's sort of what's happening, but I don't really interpret it as like bullish in the short term. To me, it's actually like a short-term headwind, if anything, right? You have clear selling pressure. And yes, IBIT is absorbing a lot of this, but I don't think IBIT, I wouldn't say IBIT is this extremely sophisticated base. There's a ton of retail traders in there. Obviously, a lot of 401k pensions, like slower, like long-term money. So I think Bitcoin, at these prices for slow money is interesting. But also the October 10th, I was a bit back and forth on this actually. In the beginning, I was like, look, this was a big like clearing event where I think a lot of people just lost essentially their coins, and it would actually be much tougher for them if prices ran back. But clearly there have been residuals. I don't think this is anything like FTX or anything like that. There's no big like credit event here. Maybe these small one-offs. But yeah, so it was a mix of like, I don't know, it was a mix of the system saying, hey, above 120, like there's just clear distribution. And a bit of PTSD, I think, from last cycle too, is like when that happens, people just tend to get lazy and sloppy and hold risk elsewhere. And I think we actually talked about this last weekend or last week at lunch, right? Like Bitcoin is in such a buy the dip mode because it's been so strong, that if it is going to go down, it's probably going to happen like quite quickly. And you're seeing that more this cycle now too, right? Where the drops just kind of happen and momentum accelerates to the downside and then it stops and we sort of chop around. So I don't know. That was a long-winded way of saying bullish at the moment. But Bitcoin, I'm not like that focused on. I think from here, you're seeing somewhat diminishing returns relative to what you can get in the rest of the market. On a buy and hold basis, maybe not, right? Because you've talked at length about a lot of the problems with alts, but just because of how volatile they are, and I think if you again have good systems in place and have good discipline, you can make way more money in other parts of the market. So Bitcoin to me is kind of almost like this, just part of your portfolio you don't really touch, but I don't see a lot of relative upside personally.
Looking for secure, regulated digital asset custody? Kraken Custody delivers institutional-grade qualified custody for institutions and high net worth clients. With multi-layer security, your assets stay safe, fully segregated, and always under your control. Trade, stake, and transfer directly from qualified custody thanks to Kraken Custody's seamless integration with Kraken Prime. Discover qualified custody built for performance at kraken.com/blockworks. Not available in certain geographies. Custody services provided by Kraken Financial, a Wyoming-chartered special purpose depository institution, and deposits are neither insured by nor subject to the protections of the FDIC. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. View legal disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures. The machine economy is here. Devices are monetizing data for their users all over the world. Tokenized robots are generating revenue for token holders. The first machine economy free zone is live in the Emirates, and it's all happening on Peaq, the machine economy computer. Head to peaq.xyz, that's peaq.xyz, to find out how you can benefit from the age of automation, or click the link in the show notes to find out more. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply.
Okay, so let's talk about just Bitcoin as a buy and hold asset. The way that I made money as a commodities trader was to, like, commodities tend to be mean reverting assets. So I would wait until basically crude oil would get undervalued relative to where I thought it should be over on a 1 to 3 year time frame, and then I would buy as much of it as I could and then just try to survive. That was my strategy. And that involves like overcoming psychological hurdles that for some reason 99% of people just can't do, right? Most people need to short-term trade and get in and out. I would just try to hold a core position from historically undervalued levels and then weather the volatility. And I try to do the same thing with Bitcoin, except Bitcoin's not a mean reverting asset. I think it's like we're sort of in a mega trend to $1 million a token for reasons previously discussed. Like, again, just to the elevator pitch is that the fiat experiment started in the late 70s when Nixon took us off the gold standard. It went well for a few decades and now it's going poorly and it will continue to get worse. So that's kind of my just general belief in Bitcoin, and probably applies to gold too, but gold's a little different, certainly for Bitcoin. So if I believe that, like I want it in my portfolio, short-term trading, I like to outsource to a system. So I think it's really cool that you've developed one, because I don't believe in watching the screens all day anymore. I'm just too freaking old for that. So I guess in the short run, we should probably discuss like what assets are good to buy and what risks there are in the short term. For all, like for Bitcoin, I think we're in the clear. To be fair, I thought we were in the clear after 1010. I thought after all those liquidations, like, come on, nobody's left short here. Everybody's been blown out, or like taken profit. The market is clean. We can continue rallying. And I was just so wrong. This time though, like the selling you're referring to, these OG whales getting out, they're not going to be unloading, like cheating yards of crypto on everybody's face if we're trading 90 or 80 or 70K. Like, again, as an option, as a young options trader, the way that you learn to understand how the Greeks work, like your risk metrics, like delta, gamma, vega, theta, etc. You, in your mind, mentally, you stress test things by taking them to the extremes. You're like, okay, dollar yen is trading 100. Will I have more theta on my option for a 100 strike call or for a 105 strike call? Well, I can't visualize that intuitively. So let me ask myself, would I have more theta on the 100 strike call or the trillion strike call? Oh, the trillion strike call is worth 0. It'll be worth 0 tomorrow. So there's 0 theta on that and lots of theta on that. Okay, so I guess the closer the strike is to the at the money, the greater the theta. That's how you learn options trading. And I do the same thing to try and understand crypto dynamics. Like, okay, there's a lot of OG selling at 125K. Would there be a lot of OG selling at $300 per Bitcoin? Like, no. Okay, so where do I guess it's not a constant phenomenon that we should just accept going forward. Like, it'll definitely peter out below, I think, 100K. I think that's a psychological level. Love to get your take. So Bitcoin, I'm not too worried about. It's the altcoins and that have been lifted by DATs that I'm starting to freak out about. So I think the trade for altcoins is wait for the first altcoin DAT to blow up. Watch what happens to the price action on that alt. Then identify the next 10 altcoin DATs that will follow suit. And it's not like those coins will be down 10% in a few nanoseconds on the news. You'll probably have a chance to short those after the first alt DAT blow up. So DATs I'm scared of for alts. If you're looking to get long alts, to just summarize, aren't you worried about that too? And which ones would you be looking at, basically?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I was actually just thinking of in terms of, I guess, what had me a bit cautious, and we've talked about it, is it is these DATs. They're actually, I think, there's more of them for Bitcoin, obviously by notional. And when I just sort of took a pass at, I'm looking at it now, even obviously with the big dip to 75K, but I think a lot of, the up move in Bitcoin was obviously driven by Saylor. If you look at his purchases after the election in the beginning of the year, they're quite sizable. We're talking every week or so, 10,000 to 20,000 Bitcoin, and now, it's all sub 1,000. And then obviously, you had Metaplanet, Semler, a bunch of others that really started kicking off. Actually, they bought kind of the Terra flows. And so in my opinion, a lot of the buying pressure that kind of got us up here was from the DATs. And you're kind of seeing that their ability to raise cash is now gone. A lot trading under 1 MNAV. I think Nakamoto bought the highs, and Metaplanet recently raised debt to get their MNAV back up to 1. But when I was sort of thinking about putting into context, I'm like, okay, so we had all this billions of dollars of DAT buying, and we're kind of unchanged on the year. To me, that is a symptom of something. I could see it as being bullish, obviously, right? The supply is just being absorbed. But you have
if it were OGs selling to new Gs like I bid, it would be fine. But it's a wealth transfer from steady hands
to DAT holders,
fair weather friends, right?
Exactly. And it's a lot of the DAT fund, the fundraise, the people investing in a lot of these pipes, it's not the sophisticated capital base. It's just crypto VCs that obviously were okay, we can't make money on altcoins, so now let's buy these DATs because obviously their performance was good. So to me, again, right, it's these whales are essentially selling into DATs as their exit liquidity, which is not great, and it's very typical toppy behavior. In terms of altcoin DATs, honestly, you only have really ETH and Sol, I think, with meaningful size. Other ones, AVAX has kind of already collapsed. I'm just taking a look. Even the Tau ones, they raised, I don't know, maybe $20 million. So I think the altcoin ones are actually quite small in size and not that systemic. The size is in really Bitcoin and ETH. Sol a little bit too, but they're quite small. And yeah, that is kind of a part of the cautious side, is these DATs can't raise any more money. There's no demand. And to me, they were a big driver of price. So when that one's gone, you need to find, okay, we got to find a new marginal buyer, which obviously can happen. And that's, I think, in terms of trading, right? You got to be open to changing your mind. So if MicroStrategy gets included S&P, or, his whatever strike offering, he was able to raise more money there and grow demand in the preferreds, that would obviously flip my view and maybe we can go higher. But that was a big part of it, right? It was just clear that they weren't really able to raise more cash. And even the Solana raise, that forward buy Ford Industries buy at up to 250 was like one of the easiest trades I've really ever seen. It was all done on chain. You could see everything. Um, they started buying around 190, finished at 250, and they told you how much they were going to buy. I think 1.5 billion.
Wait,
And
sorry,
it's actually,
they bought Solana on chain.
sorry, not on chain. You could see the transfers going from the broker or I think from Galaxy to their custodian, and
Oh
you could
wow.
just see it all happen. It was like, hey, they just bought 200 million, 100 million, and it was just the
I mean,
easiest
that's
trade.
dumb, but it would have been like unfathomably dumb to buy it on chain instead of
Yeah,
on like
that would have been dumb.
Binance or whatever. Yeah, I still don't
No,
understand
yeah,
why people trade OTC. But I mean, I guess yeah, you're supposed to trade OTC if you want to keep your flow like relatively off the market, stealth mode,
yeah.
or if you have an issue with KYC on an exchange, or if you just are getting
Sometimes it's
stupidly,
nice to just trade just by text. You
yeah,
don't want to do anything.
just trade by text. And it also, but like it defeats the entire purpose if your trades are then telegraphed to the entire market. That's ridiculous. And Solana's had a move, hasn't it? It's gone from
Yeah,
250 to 150 in a straight line.
I think their average buys were around, I want to say 220, 230. So yeah, I mean, pretty staggering. Pretty staggering drop, and it's kind of like it's a
Yeah,
sign of where things are. I don't know. Chris Bernitzky put out like his thoughts, and I kind of agree with him.
he's been bearish.
Yeah, he's been bearish. I kind of agree, but I'm looking for reasons to go against again. Right now, it's just like, hey, system said buy, so buy. But I do think the charts are kind of broken. I don't love just going just off charts because like it can be a fool's game sometimes. But you know, big picture, I think they help you just kind of understand like when to like press and then when to obviously play a bit more defense. Yeah,
It's funny when you talk about like trading charts. When I was my first year in the game, 2007, one of my mentors showed me a bunch of charts and he's like, would you buy or sell these charts? And, I had a good
yeah.
answer for each one because, in college, I was like kind of a chart,
Jonah the
um,
chartist.
chart, chart aficionado. And, as many first time traders are. And basically, then he admitted that he just created them all with a random number generator in Excel. And I felt stupid. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that charts don't offer value. They do, but like they don't offer that much value. Basically, the value that a chart offers you is it reveals whether an asset is trending up, down, or sideways. And it also tells you whether the levels you're buying are historically high, historically low, or historically meh. And that's kind of, I think that's like pretty much the end of it for me, in terms of like how much that's useful. You do need to know if there's directionality or not in the market,
Yeah.
but these charts, they look like now they looked, they're not trending, and that's the problem, right? That's what makes
I
this so
agree with
hard.
you. I agree with you too on charts. Like you should not weight them the most because I think like this time around, like so like we don't break out or break down like we did before. Like when the chart looks really bad, like it's close to a bottom at this point
Yeah.
now. Like that's how it trades. Like I was looking at Heat yesterday, and it was just going down in a straight line. Oh yeah, 31. It couldn't look any worse, but then obviously, we're 10% higher. I think I think you're totally right. Like it's been a feature this cycle where if you are looking at charts, it should really be like daily, weeklies, like, you just want a big picture. You don't,
Yeah,
it's not predictive of anything.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I guess big picture, right? Bitcoin, I refuse to sell my Bitcoin here. I don't care if the
Yeah.
OGs are selling. I think they're wrong. I don't give a crap if they're like, what, posting like that dillweed guy Mert from Helios posted some video that's a year old of Peter Thiel getting bearish
Hmm.
Bitcoin because at 65K last June because
Oh, was it a 65?
yeah, it's like because it wasn't
That's so
fulfilling his ideals, and that's making the rounds
yeah.
on crypto Twitter right now. Um, you know, Obviously I don't agree with that sort of thinking because it's like, all right, just because Peter Thiel sold his Bitcoin and is out and is now like bear posting it doesn't mean that it can't go higher. And so what if the libertarian ideals of the OG Bitcoiners have been, let's say, betrayed by the new entrants like Larry Fink and Donald Trump and the institutions? That's not bearish. The anarchists have less money than the institutions by like 50 orders of magnitude. So who cares if the institutions come in? Our bags are all going to get pumped higher. And the peer-to-peer, like you can still put money on a cold wallet, stick it up your ass and flee the country without it getting discovered. Just as easily as before. You can still transfer value outside of traditional financial institutional rails just as easily as before. Like the ideals of Bitcoin are still there. There's just more money coming in from institutions. So I don't believe the whole like because OGs are selling Bitcoin has to like die or narrative. Like it's just not true. The opposite is true, and people are just coping. The older crypto natives are coping with regard to ETH and Solana. I'm worried about ETH. I don't think it's investable right now because the future of ETH, to quote our friend Kyle Samani, is base, right? And I don't know how building on base accrues value to ETH. And then Solana always has a way of like coming back stronger than ever before. So I certainly wouldn't write it off. But what's confusing is like all of the institutions seem to be building on base, not Solana. So I just can't help but wonder where Solana fits into the basically the picture of institutional adoption that theoretically is going to drive the next wave of this higher, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
One thing I actually do think that is actually more bullish for Bitcoin, I think like Avi likes to talk about this. I actually find the bear targets are like pretty low or pretty high.
Yeah.
Like this, like 70K. Look, again, if you're all in, 30% is gonna hurt. You obviously should not be all in. You should be smart about risk management, but a 30% drop in Bitcoin is not that bad, and you're likely getting, like, depending on where market conditions are, right? You can have a V bottom or you can have a long, just kind of grinded out bottom. The grinded out one would hurt. But at 70, you probably wouldn't be sitting there for longer than, a couple months. So for long-term investors, I actually agree. I don't think the downside targets are that scary from here. On the alt side, I don't know. I don't have any, like, I guess, convicted theses on where this goes, because for ETH, I mean, look, ETH, like everyone wrote it off and then it, went up 3 times. Just based on how it trades though, like it's a tough one. It's just huge. It just takes a lot of money to move it. And I'm not really sure where that next big marginal buyer is, right? Tom Lee essentially said they want to get to 5% of ETH. I think they're closer to 3. So that's a huge like buyer that's just stepping out. Obviously he can evangelize, the network, and they can do things, but it's going to be tough because markets are obviously going to be like, they just want to know who's going to buy this, who's going to buy my bag after me. And the value accrual for ETH at the moment, like nothing has really changed in terms of it has store value properties, but it's kind of inferior to Bitcoin. I actually haven't really been keeping too much track of on-chain fees. The whole narrative he's going after, right, is, it's like the home of stable coins. I do agree institutions are much more likely to like, have liquidity on ETH, but I agree with you. It could be base. It actually could be their own L2s, like the cost of spinning up your, rolling up your own chain just keep getting lower, and it keeps getting
Tempo,
easier.
plasma,
yeah.
stable.
And that's if you're any big corporation, you want to own the sequencer fees. Like you want to milk that cow. You don't want to send it back to ETH. And I think L2 fees are super, super low. Solana is also an interesting one because, yeah, I mean that like a super low fee chain on just an economic level, I don't really see like kind of a lot where the value is. But to be fair, Solana has kind of been the home of, in my opinion, where new, like younger entrants, that's where they onboard into crypto. And there's obviously a lot of value there. I do think the ecosystem has been like super extractive though. And so I don't know. I guess one of my core theses though, and we're rambling a little bit, is I am very bullish on this internet capital markets idea. I don't know where it's going to live, but Avi and I actually wrote a blog post in like 2019. We said like stable coins are, they're Euro dollars 2.0. We said this is like we're like, this is technology for the US to export the dollar to the rest of the world. And obviously that bolsters demand. And I think the US government, at least under Trump, is definitely going to use DeFi to export our capital markets. Because I think, very like big believer on like just the big repatriation trade. Last like 40, 50 years, money has just flown in to the US. And I think it's slowly going out for a lot of reasons, mainly just populism, trade policies. There's a lot of uncertainty. Um, and DeFi is a way to export our stocks, bonds, real estate to the rest of the world, because we kind of do need more bag holders to replace the foreigners who are going to sell. So I think, to me, internet capital markets is it's a government mandated initiative, and it's like you never want to fade that.
Looking for secure, regulated digital asset custody? Kraken Custody delivers institutional-grade qualified custody for institutions and high net worth clients. With multi-layer security, your assets stay safe, fully segregated, and always under your control. Trade, stake, and transfer directly from qualified custody thanks to Kraken Custody's seamless integration with Kraken Prime. Discover qualified custody built for performance at kraken.com/blockworks. Not available in certain geographies. Custody services provided by Kraken Financial, a Wyoming-chartered special purpose depository institution, and deposits are neither insured by nor subject to the protections of the FDIC. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. View legal disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures. The machine economy is here. Devices are monetizing data for their users all over the world. Tokenized robots are generating revenue for token holders. The first machine economy free zone is live in the Emirates, and it's all happening on Peaq, the machine economy computer. Head to peaq.xyz, that's peaq.xyz, to find out how you can benefit from the age of automation, or click the link in the show notes to find out more. Shout out to today's sponsor, Katana. Katana is a DeFi first chain built for deep liquidity and high yield. No empty emissions, just real yield and sequencer fees routed back to DeFi users. Incubated by Polygon Labs and GSR, Katana is launching with notable ecosystem of primitives, assets, and partners like Morpho, Chainlink, and more. Katana's 1 billion CAT campaign is live. Bridge and deposit directly into vaults in one simple click and start earning immediately on your Ether, Bitcoin, USDC, and more. Follow the link in today's show notes to get started. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply.
All right. Yeah. Internet capital markets. It's funny. Like, I guess in most countries, it's easy to send a stable coin or fiat payment, on Zelle or whatever the UK or Australian equivalent is. So people kind of take for granted that money movement has been solved. It really hasn't, right? Because on the back end, everything still settles T+2. And in a world of zero interest rates, who cares? But in a world of 4% interest rates, if you have like $50 trillion tied up in that T+2, getting the T+2 down to T+ like 10 seconds or 5 seconds makes a big difference. A lot of capital gets unlocked. And even more so, like, we talk about this on the pod from time to time. If I want to send you $1, that's trivial and easy and instant. If I want to send you one share of S&P 500, ETF, and one share of my S&P 500 ETF, that'll take like 3 weeks and 2 hours of phone calls of people asking why and scratching their heads. Like, being able to move non-stable value, I can see why boomers would say that's not important. Like, why would you ever need to transfer a share of your ETFs or your IBM stock to somebody else? But as the dollar goes to hell, because they just keep making more of it and spending more than they take in, they being the governments of the world, eventually, like, I think the S&P 500 is probably a better denominator for global trade, or maybe even Bitcoin, than the USD. So, like, why would you want to have your money held in dollars in a checking account earning 2 basis points is a waste for you. You should have all of your money in S&P, and then only when you swipe, to buy your coffee, should the S&P get converted to dollars, or the S&P get transferred directly to the coffee shop if that's how they want to, preserve value in their treasury instead of having it all inflate away to zero. Money just feels like the frickin' tuna sandwich we ate last week costs like what, $35? It's a joke. The money since COVID, money has just become like something ridiculous and hard to understand. and it's not like me being elitist about it. Like, everybody's best friend, new best friend Zoran Mamdani just got elected on that kind of like free beer platform because inflation has been so painful for people across every category. So I guess we have a
Yeah.
few things to talk about. We got to talk about Mamdani because this is like a political shift that may impact crypto. Um,
Yeah.
I cheated out my punk. That got some engagement online.
Heard
I don't
about
know.
that.
Like, what do you? You're a punk holder. What do you think? Where should we
I
start?
would be, I think I have mine offered. I love my punk, but I don't know. My kind of my thesis on punks is I don't think the average ones should ever just trade above $1 million. We actually talked about this. I think punks are much more tethered to dollar prices than ETH. Like they're just priced in ETH, but I think people think of them as, you know, dollars. I think people buy them with like fresh dollars. So, if I can get half of them, like half a million for that, to me, I'm like, my golden rule is I think you always leave the last 2x for someone else. You don't need the last double. On Mamdani, I don't even like.
Wait,
I want
before
to
we
make
go to
sure
him, can I just explain
yeah,
why I sold my punk? You said
yeah, for
something. You
sure.
said I love my punk, and
Yeah,
I loved my punk. And
yeah,
after 3 years of rocking it, I just didn't care anymore at all. Like it
yeah.
didn't mean anything to me. It wasn't special. Like I have plenty of artwork that is worth a lot less than what I paid for it. That's how cars
You have a
work
nice,
too.
yeah, you have a nice art collection.
I
Great
love
taste.
my I love my vehicle. I love my art. Um, but like it's worth less than what I paid, all of it. And I don't care. I'm keeping it forever. The punk, I'm like, I don't even like this anymore. I don't even feel cool rocking a punk as a profile picture. So I, my entry price was 700K. My exit price was 195. So technically I lost like about half a mil on that trade. But then, I did still sold it for roughly 200 grand. So just so people understand the math, like if I hold a punk, I don't have that 200 grand. If I sell the punk,
Yeah.
I get 200 grand right away that I can use to do other things with, like buy assets I like. Um, and then the other thing is a 500K loss in a high tax jurisdiction where I live, I get 200K of that straight back into my pocket
Yep.
via the tax loss. I can write it off against other gains. Now, if I didn't have gains, I wouldn't be able to do that. But luckily for me, this incredibly disastrous CryptoPunk trade is not the only trade I've ever done. So it does, for all you people out there making fun of me on the internet, like it's worth thinking about tax losses because that's actual dollars in your pocket, right? So basically having a profile picture as a punk was costing me $400,000, and by selling it I now have 400K worth of liquidity that I didn't have before. So
Totally.
that's like a nice chunk that I could put that into Bitcoin on a dip, and maybe double it somehow or triple it if I put it into the right altcoin. The alts I'm looking at, I like hype on dips because there's a
Yep.
buyer of hype that isn't retail. The buyer is the Hyperliquid Foundation when they use their fees to buy and burn hype. So I like that there's a new buyer.
Hyperliquid. Hyperliquid it's a super interesting one for me because I mean it's like it kind of spawned more or less like a new, I guess, category within crypto that I do think, could become, a total like that could be $1 trillion category, right? Of essentially like doing financial services fully on chain. Like the on chain Binance was always the holy grail. Um, what's interesting though is I feel like it's so owned, which isn't a bad thing, right? Like it's kind of the same thing for Bitcoin. Um, the biggest risk I see is that, Jeff and the Hyperliquid team, they're not really doing any lobbying whatsoever. Their only really pull with the government is probably via Paradigm, or I think Andreessen bought a bunch, right? So they have those venture capitalists that can lobby. It's hard to imagine that the centralized exchanges aren't trying to force some KYC stuff on it. I don't know. It could be a mid curve take, right? Because it is super strong, and I think bring equities on chain is great. Um, but to me, like there is this moment, and I actually think, you know, the long-term capital gains on the airdrop is actually probably is probably going to be the thing that people overlook the most. The unlocks, I think, are not that big of a concern.
It's basically
I
don't buy in March or February.
no,
Wait.
from the airdrop. It's actually coming up, I think, in like a month.
Oh, you think people are going to sell it right away?
Well, because so the way that I mean, it was actually pretty genius how they did the airdrop. They actually structured it as like it was a trade more or less. So you didn't have to essentially if you didn't want to pay short term, you could just hold it for a year,
Mm,
which I'm sure a lot of people did. It was actually great for recipients, like way
okay.
more tax efficient. Um, so it's one of these interesting ones, and I don't know, like I don't know. We talked about this. I do like kind of going for things that are more overlooked and less consensus, but honestly, in this market, actually, it's probably not the way to go.
I mean, the thing about hype is that you can still win even if it's consensus because as long as it's still used as a product, the fees get passed back to you, right? It's
Yep.
like it's like you know, Meta stock or Nvidia stock being overowned. Everybody owns it, but it still
Yeah.
goes up because they perform. So that's something about
Yeah.
Hyperliquid that I like. But I guess I'd be worried that, like to your point about regulation and lobbying, like what if Aster just like what if
It's
Aster does
unlikely. It's
what
unlikely
CZ
that
did to
Aster.
FTX? Yeah.
Yeah, it's unlikely, honestly. I think now, and I don't know if you saw Trump's comment about CZ, where
Yeah.
he was
I don't
like,
know.
he's like, I don't know. So it's less likely. So I guess one of the things we talked about, and one of my like kind of, I guess theses going forward is that yeah, there aren't that many long-term investable things in crypto at the moment. There's like four like primary use cases I think that are like trillion-dollar markets in like 10 years. You have like store of value, which has been proven out. Privacy, I think, will be a big one. You have this kind of on-chain finance, and then I think you have like more or less like distributed resources. I think like BitTensor is like the best example of that.
Yep.
But the thing that Hyde benefits from is that it is one of the only investable, assets. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed is like retail at this point is not willing to buy anything with a cap table for an extended period of time. Like one of the best things about Hyperliquid is that it was all airdrop. There was no VCs. Um, that makes it stand out so much more from the pack. Yeah, crypto venture is not in a good spot. Um, yeah, and I think it's actually much better for like liquid investors because the only really remedy for this is for projects to just start ICOing at much lower valuations. Otherwise, like there's just no recovering. So I think the market will adapt.
Well, that's what's happening with CryptoPunks, right? Like lower valuation, like CryptoPunks are rapidly converging to the price of normal art. So
Yep.
we're seeing the compression trade happen in one sector of crypto called NFTs. Why shouldn't the compression trade happen in others? The corollary to your theorem about there being very few investable assets is that there are many good shorts, right? Like if we're still
Shorting is a tough game, though. It's a tough
yeah.
game. And it's like you just make no money. I do it, obviously, but it's always like the only way to get more returns is if you add leverage, and that's just such a date. It's like the math just doesn't work out in terms of like, managing the collateral. It
I had a good
sucks.
one on Whiff. I had a good short on
Yeah, that was a
Whiff
good one.
because basically it was like the Sphere came out and they're like, we never talked to these guys. This is like we don't know what Whiff is. Sorry, there's never going to be a hat on the Sphere. And then Whiff went down like 5%. And I'm like short, and then it went down 50%, but like almost overnight. But basically, I haven't really done a lot of shorting because I think you need to monitor it more actively than I'm willing to in my old age. What what I think is interesting about shorting, like your boy Flood was victory lapping his whatever it was called, like the Kingmaker portfolio, where it's like long hype, long BTC, short garbage, and the garbage is like
Mhm.
say Aptos, WorldCoin, all this random like obviously never going to happen type stuff. Aptos is the funniest. Mo gets his unlock, sells it, and just quits. Like why on earth would you ever be long Aptos? No matter how good Aptos is looking here, like you want to be short that. So it's tempting to short. It's just you
Yeah.
kind of can't. And
Yeah.
even Solana is tempting to short because it's like this is obviously not it's not going to fulfill its internet capital markets promise. But to your point about it onboarding young users, like, yeah, Solana is kind of the Nickelodeon of crypto, or the
Hmm.
teen people of crypto. It's just
You're really dating yourself here, Jonah.
what you Nickelodeon still exists. It's funny. Speaking of dating myself, I went to a Clippers game last night with my son just to take him out, and I wanted to like cover his eyes during the section where the cheerleaders dance in the middle at like half court,
Is the Intuit Dome
center
getting
court.
crazy these days?
They spent $2 billion on this like mega arena, the most modern, nicest arena I've ever seen in my life, in the middle of Inglewood, which is, Long Beach, Inglewood, right? Like that's what Inglewood was when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And then I go, there's this $2 billion arena surrounded by, Inglewood. And I go in there, and they definitely preserve the local culture with the way that the Clippers dancers dance. It was like a mixture between TikTok breakdancing and just straight up Inglewood street life. And I wanted to like cover his eyes. It was hilarious. Anyway, that made me feel old.
The
Uh,
best part in Intuit Dome is you just see Steve Ballmer going crazy. That's
I
the
didn't
best part.
see I didn't see Steve Ballmer going crazy, but I wish I had. Speaking of young people, the mayor of New York is 7 years younger than me. The hell is going on there? This is your town, Max.
I don't know.
Should we be worried
I feel
about
like
our
I just bought
bags?
the top. I feel like I just bought the top on New York. Moved here, I guess, more recently. Um,
I was there
I don't know.
in the Bloomberg years.
Yeah, I watched his speech. We'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that I think he'll be ineffective in a lot of his policies, and it will kind of serve as you know, an example or of like a socialist regime kind of not working. But the more sober side of me, it's a sign of the times. You can hear in his speech, the kind of, I guess, examples he uses are the people he's appealing to. Like that is who's hurting the most. And I mean, not to get too political, like obviously a lot of the immigration policies in these liberal cities are, you know, not what I would choose, and that's kind of where we are. So it's definitely a bad mix. Hoping is ineffective, but there's obviously there's a lot of subtle things he can do to make life, I guess, a little less safe.
Yeah, and I think in terms of just like how that matters to the listeners of our podcast, probably most of whom don't live in New York City, um, like what does it mean for asset prices that Mamdani is now the de facto leader of the Democratic Party in the United States of America and the global epicenter of capitalism, the beating heart of America's economy, right? I, let's put my views aside. Obviously, like we're sitting here glibly talking about like flipping JPEGs for six-figure losses and art collections, and that's not how I recognize that I'm pretty I'm thankful to be in this situation, and it's mostly luck, to be honest, just luck of the draw. I will say, from my personal perspective, I wouldn't want to live in New York City if Mamdani is the mayor. But I listened to his acceptance speech about how now this is politics and power for the people whose knuckles are burned from working in the kitchens, whose fingers are calloused from like stacking Amazon packages. And the way that I relate to that community is that my father was the number one union sort of labor lawyer in the United States of America for about 25 years. He argued 4 cases in front of the Supreme Court. I grew up in basically a communist household in Berkeley, believing in a lot of Mamdani's policies because my parents indoctrinated me with them. And we had the swag at home to prove it, like picket signs from uh, the USX POSCO steel picket with like bullet holes in them, like real battles of American labor. And at my dad's funeral, there were thousands and thousands of people at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, like Cesar Chavez, he represented, farm workers crying, thank you, Victor Van Borg, you gave me a life, you gave me dignity. Like this, the working community, my people, I said my last name on a bus once, and some guy who's like covered in paint was like, excuse me, do you know Victor Van Borg? Like, yeah, he's my son. Oh my God, please tell him thank you. Like, I have a pension because of your father. Like real working men and women were helped by my dad. And so I grew up in this world that Mamdani's talking about. Obviously I rebelled, and I'm a crude oil and cryptocurrency trader now, so I don't think he'd be too proud. But at the same time, like, tying this back into the broader theme, these people need help. Like this, the economy has just left hundreds of millions of people behind, and that's part of the appeal of crypto, is that you can escape via this asset class in a way you couldn't, just via the old school way of just getting a job, getting a government job, and living the American dream off of that. The problem is that I don't think any of Mamdani's policies are going to work. Like, you don't solve income inequality by redistribution. You solve it by giving bargaining power to the workers and giving them equity in the value that they create, kind of the way that Vital gave me equity in the value I created for them, like the way that trading companies are sort of socialist microcosms within a broader capitalist system. Like, workers probably should have more equity in the value that they produce. And so I don't, basically Mamdani is a redistributionist. He's not like a collective bargaining guy. I think they're very two distinct ideologies. And as far, just tying this back into like your bags, our bags, redistribution historically precedes asset price depreciation like 100 times out of 100. So if Mamdani is the leader of the party, and this is the way democratic politics are going, this isn't like a labor movement that's going to solve workers' problems via legal action the way my dad did. This is like a redistributionist movement, like what Pol Pot probably was after in Cambodia, or any of the other people that led their economies straight to hell. The Un family or Kim family in Korea or whatever. So basically, my take is watch the Democratic net favorability rating of the party, and if Mamdani remains the standard bearer, and that starts to become nationally favorable, then it's time to pretty much liquidate your asset holdings and sell. Meanwhile, if like a Gavin Newsom becomes the standard bearer and the Democratic favorability rating rebounds, that's okay, because Newsom is more of a mainstream politician. It's really like, are the redistributionists going to take national power, or is this just an experiment in New York City that's going to fail and scare people off from redistribution? I don't know. What do you think?
I tend to be like optimistic, or try to be optimistic about these things, and think it'll be kind of confined to New York. I do think it makes sense to just, and I think this is why Zcash has been going up. You definitely want some Zcash or just Monero, stashed away. I don't have any of it for context.
Wait, why Zcash?
I mean,
that's a why.
Privacy coins.
But like, couldn't you just like an exchange is as good a mixer as any? Like, couldn't you just like put some Bitcoin through a centralized exchange and then offboard it to a cold wallet and hold that?
You could.
Why do you, basically, what problem does Zcash solve that you couldn't accomplish just with Bitcoin?
You can just obfuscate, obviously, where the funds are.
Greater obfuscation. Fine.
And the movement of them. An exchange is a central point of failure. Obviously, I don't know if AOC, but actually, she could. AOC's president 2028. It hits up Binance. I think it's a super low probability.
I think it's higher than people think. Like, there should be no billionaires could easily turn into, there should be no people with more than 5 million, and they could, track your assets like pretty easily.
Look, we've obviously seen, we've seen this. It kind of does obviously feel like history is repeating itself. My bet is that humanity just keeps progressing at such a fast rate that it's never going to be as bad as it was before. And I think general intelligence keeps going up and up. So, and like standards of humanity. So I don't think it'll get there. I do think the bigger point though that you mentioned is like a lot of these people that are left behind, like, a lot of the jobs that even they would want, or the jobs that would essentially get them, a more equal playing field, like AI is taking those jobs away. Like a lot of this information work is going to be automated away and is. So that's the bigger issue. And I actually think it's better for, I guess, our bags, our asset prices, right? Is because I don't really see a situation in which the government's going to have to support this in one way or another. Because AI is only going to grow. It's like a national security movement at this point. And I think for the government to justify their investments in AI and bolstering that, our level of intelligence, they're going to have to obviously support the people that it's kind of disenfranchising. So yeah, on the like kind of big picture, like I agree, asset prices up.
Yeah, I mean, short term, AI makes every company in the S&P 500 more efficient, more EBITDA per employee, so asset prices go up. But eventually, I think Mamdani is the canary in the coal mine for, and Zcash too, for like, hey, people aren't just going to tolerate, people at both ends of the wealth spectrum, the top and the bottom, are going to have some issues when like the poorest people, the neediest in society, are being asked to like tolerate higher bills and more higher unemployment, and the people at the highest echelons of wealth in society are being asked to like tolerate more what feels to them like unfair redistribution. You're sort of seeing the
Yeah.
you're sort of seeing the fuse get lit at both ends. And so I think to your point about leaving the last 2x for somebody else, I think there's another 5x in Bitcoin right now, frankly, in the short,
Yeah.
within the period of time before we get like redistribution in the national political agenda at the earliest. So I think we're safe for now, but you really do have to have your finger on the trigger at some point in the future.
I'm pulling up a tweet that a friend sent me yesterday. It's from this guy. I guess I didn't realize he was at base. This is Antonio Garcia Martinez. He essentially just says, he just draws parallels to Chesa Boudin and SF, and he just makes the argument. He's just saying, look, like the lower class is actually going to feel the pain of this, right? Because the upper class has the means to essentially insulate themselves from all these issues, right? They can afford housing wherever, they can get private security, they can move. Capital obviously is more able to move than people, and so a lot of these issues will actually be, I guess, burdened by the people he's trying to help.
I really like him. I would recommend everybody go and buy his book, Chaos Monkeys. He used to work for my boss at Goldman, so he describes that trading floor zeitgeist very well. We follow each other on Twitter. I think he's a really brilliant commentator of modern times, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. User just put in the chat here, crypto worm. Max, how much you bench? So this is another important question we got to cover before the end of the pod.
I guess ask for like a 1 rep max, or for like a 5x5, or I need to
Let's
know
hear
specific.
about let's hear like your 8 reps set and your single rep max.
It's honestly not that impressive. I feel like I used to be in way better shape in college. I don't know, for 8, like 195, and then for
Whoa.
1 rep, like 225, 235.
I peaked out in high
higher.
school. I could bench 250 for 1 rep, and now I probably can't even. And I was like 180 type set guy, and now I probably can't even do a third of that. I'm like Zoran Mamdani level bencher. But I get that.
My peak was definitely like sophomore year of college. You need a gym buddy. That's what keeps you accountable. If you have a friend that you go with, like you'll push it way harder.
I would be gym buddies with you. We're crypto buddies. We push each other harder to make money in this market. We even kind of look similar at like just a vague kind of way on this pod. The juxtaposition is shocking here.
Yeah.
You're obviously younger and better looking. Last thing before we go, because I do have to run in a minute. The folks at Blockworks are saying like, we're looking for new podcasters. We want to start more crypto podcasts, and it can't just be another crypto news podcast. Come with like fresh ideas. So I obviously proposed the idea of like Telemundo style, like D-list anchor women from Bogota, Colombia, doing crypto news topless in Spanish. That got shot down, unfortunately. So let's put the ball in your court, Max. What is missing in the world of crypto podcasts that you like? What kind of content do you think the audience needs at this point that isn't out there?
I mean, I think you guys are actually kind of touching on it, but I think it needs more. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I think, obviously, we have really good like news roundups. There's a lot of actually good like technical deep dives. Yeah, I don't know. I'm biased. I think actually just probably more investment related, content.
Maybe
And
we got to get you on the show more often. Maybe just do some max time every week. I really enjoyed this.
yeah, likewise. So we can definitely pencil in some time. It's good to get our Telegram and phone conversations out, into the public.
Yeah, for sure. Man, these are crazy times. Yeah, good luck everybody navigating this. This is wild. Anything else before we jump, or I got to go in a minute or two. Sorry.
No, all good. Yeah, be smart. I guess stay safe and go get them. I don't know. It's good times.
All right, let's end it there, Max. Great talking to you. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Nothing said on the 1000X podcast is a recommendation to buy or sell any investments or products. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions, not financial advice or necessarily the views of Blockworks. Our hosts, guests, and the Blockworks team may hold positions in the company's funds or projects discussed.